You've been doing this for years. You have the skills, the results, maybe even the title on your door, or the followers on your profile. And yet, there's a specific moment right before you hit send on that email, right before you walk into that meeting, right before you open your mouth to share an idea, where something tightens in your chest and whispers, "Who do you think you are?" You know that feeling. The one where you're sitting in a room full of people who seem to belong there, and you're quietly convinced that today might be the day someone finally figures out you've been winging it the entire time, that your career has been an elaborate magic trick, that luck, timing, and the fact that no one looked too closely have gotten you this far, and that the clock is ticking. You replay the moments you stumbled. You dismiss the moments you succeeded. You read a compliment and think they don't know the full picture. You receive praise and mentally footnote every flaw the person couldn't see. You work harder than almost anyone around you, not entirely because you love it, but because some part of you believes you have to, just to stay ahead of being found out. That right there has a name, and understanding it might be the most disorienting and ultimately freeing thing you do today. In 1978, two psychologists at Georgia State University, Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, were working with high-achieving women who, by every external measure, were exceptional. Strong academic records, impressive careers, respected by their peers, and yet, almost universally, these women described a persistent, gnawing belief that they didn't actually deserve their success, that they had somehow fooled everyone, that it was only a matter of time before the curtain was pulled back. Clance and Imes named it the Impostor Phenomenon. They didn't call it a disorder. They didn't call it a flaw. Because here's what the data kept showing. This wasn't the experience of people who were failing. It was almost exclusively the experience of people who were succeeding. Decades of research later, we now know that roughly 70% of people will experience imposter feelings at some significant point in their lives. In 2024, searches for the term surged by 75%, which tells you something about the world we've built and the pace at which it asks us to prove ourselves. This isn't a niche experience. This isn't weakness. This is one of the most common psychological patterns on the planet. But here's where it gets interesting. Here's the part nobody tells you. In 1999, psychologists David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger published a study that would become one of the most referenced findings in all of behavioral science. Their core discovery, people who are genuinely unskilled in a domain tend to dramatically overestimate their competence. They're not lying, they're not being arrogant, they simply don't have enough knowledge to understand how much they don't know. They can't see their own blind spots because the skill required to spot the blind spot is the same skill they're missing. That finding got all the attention, but there's a second half to the Dunning-Kruger effect that barely makes the headlines. People who are highly competent tend to underestimate their performance. They look at the gaps in their knowledge, gaps they can only see because they know enough to find them, and interpret those gaps as evidence of inadequacy. The more you know, the more clearly you can see everything you don't know. And to an anxious brain, that gap looks exactly like a fraud. The person who feels like an imposter and the person who has actually earned their place at the table are, more often than not, the same person. Now, why does the brain do this? Why would a competent, intelligent, capable human being construct an elaborate internal case for their own unworthiness? Because your brain is not optimized for the 21st century. It's optimized for survival in small tribes on the African savanna, somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 years ago. In that environment, being expelled from the group wasn't embarrassing. It was a death sentence. No shelter, no food, no protection. The social brain evolved with one overriding directive: do not get kicked out. And the way you don't get kicked out is by being useful, being competent, being someone the group needs. So your nervous system evolved to monitor, obsessively, constantly, any signal that you might be seen as less capable than advertised. Any hint that the group might reassess your value. Any moment where you could be exposed. What you call imposter syndrome, your brain calls threat detection. It's not a malfunction. It's a feature from a very old operating system, running in a world it was never designed for. The problem is that your Stone Age hardware can't distinguish between, I might be exiled from the tribe, and I'm about to give a presentation to 12 colleagues. The cortisol hits the same. The dread feels the same. The impulse to hide, to overprepare, to shrink. Identical. You're not falling apart. You're running ancient software on a modern problem. Here's the part that makes the trap so elegant and so cruel. The imposter cycle works like this. You work hard, you succeed, and instead of not updating your self-image, instead of thinking, I did that because I'm capable, you attribute the success to luck, to timing, to circumstance, to anything outside yourself. So the internal belief never updates. The fear doesn't decrease. If anything, now you have more to lose because the stakes got higher. So you work even harder. You over-prepare. You triple-check. You say yes to things you're not sure about and then scramble to justify the yes. You succeed again. And again, you explain it away. The cycle feeds itself. Your success becomes evidence of nothing. Your effort becomes invisible to you. The gap between how the world sees you and how you see yourself gets wider, not smaller, because the world updates its view with every result, and you don't. This is why the people in the room who seem the most confident are often genuinely the least competent. They haven't developed the self-awareness to be scared. And the people burning the midnight oil, second-guessing every move, convinced they're one mistake away from catastrophe, they're usually the ones the room actually needs. So what do you do with all of this? The answer is not believe in yourself more. That phrase has never once talked someone out of imposter syndrome, and it's not going to start today. The answer is to change the framework entirely. Your brain is unreliable as a judge of your feelings, but your track record isn't. That's the distinction. Stop asking, am I actually good enough? That question is a trap, because your brain was never designed to answer it honestly. It was designed to keep you safe, not to give you an accurate performance review. Start asking instead, what is the evidence? Not the feeling, the evidence. The actual record of things you've done, problems you've solved, moments you've showed up and delivered. Your brain will not volunteer this information. You have to go looking for it deliberately, because the anxious mind has a negativity bias that files away every failure in high definition and every success in a folder it never opens. The goal isn't to eliminate self-doubt. Healthy self-doubt is what makes you better. It's what keeps you growing, learning, asking questions. The goal is to stop confusing awareness of your limitations with proof that you don't belong. They are not the same thing. One is wisdom. The other is just fear wearing a very convincing suit. You feel like a fraud. That feeling is real, but feelings are data, not verdicts. And the data, the actual, external, documented data of your life, tells a very different story than the voice in your head at 2 a.m. The fraud doesn't lie awake worrying about being exposed. You do, and that's precisely the point.